the illusion is the stories that our mind tells us, all the stories our mind tells us, based on all of our conditioning, that we are, the nature of who we are primarily and predominantly is the emotional, mental, and physical self. That's the illusion. And everything that we believe about it. This is the one that really shifted for me, was really recognizing and getting through the meditative spaciousness of just feeling into it over and again. Wow, I am believing my thoughts. And where did my thoughts come from? Me. Based on what? Based on all my conditioning, and based on the thoughts that came prior, and based on bad teaching, based on media and society and fear and doubt and all of that. So for me, the illusion is, and the illusion that I encounter out in the world is, again, everything that doesn't recognize the true eternal nature of self. That's the illusion. Everything that is entranced in the illusion that we are anything other than the true eternal spirit of life.
This is episode 25 of the Ownstream podcast, featuring Chess Edwards.
Welcome to the Ownstream podcast. We're so happy you're with us this week. I'm Stephen Shelley.
I'm Teresa Scoba.
And if you notice that we're a little more chill and zen, it's because we've just literally hung up with Chess Edwards, who, even through Skype, even with our powerful laptop here, even with my phone to my left, and I can see text coming through, even with all of that, Chess has a certain influence. And it was an amazing conversation with him. He's really, really a wonderful man. And anyway, you're in for a real treat.
Yeah, his connection to something greater is so evident. Evident from the time that we met him spontaneously, which Stephen will talk about in a minute, but just the connection. It's so deep. You could tell it goes very far beyond the illusion of physicality. Yeah, he is very far beyond that to something much deeper. And that he talks a lot in this conversation about the importance of finding stillness to encounter your true self. And I think that's what we're experiencing right now, is the stillness he brought us to through this conversation. It was almost a meditation in action, I think, this conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, we had him on video, and so we would ask him questions, and you could see him kind of set his posture so he could just be there. Then he would really digest the question. You could see he would process it and come with something really quite to that question, and in some cases beyond it, as if he could sense there was more there than what we were even introducing. But we met Chess, well, we actually saw him at a retreat we went to in Sedona some months ago. We talked about that on a prior episode. Bentinho Massaro gave a weekend retreat in Sedona, so we went for that, and it was wonderful. Bentinho is something that I guess we have in common with Chess. So we don't really talk about Bentinho very much in this, though we do allude to it. So let's just put that out there now so you understand what that is. We met at a I saw him. I guess we both saw him at that event, and it was very clear that he had something special about him. And if you go to spiritual retreats a lot, as I have and Teresa has, then you sort of sense that there's things happening with people there that are maybe more evolved or open, or there's a certain special quality, let's say, about
energy.
them. Maybe not more evolved, but a kind of energy, and Chess has that. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, I'd like to talk to him. But as is often the case with these retreats, when it's over, people scatter, or there's not an obvious way to begin a conversation. So, of course, maybe a week or two later, he walks into the restaurant where we were having dinner in Encinitas, a day's drive away. And I said to Teresa, I said, isn't that the guy from the Bentinho retreat? And she said, oh, I think it is. So we went and talked to him, and it was this wonderful kind of encounter where we immediately kind of realized we're in the same family. And I think that's really a special, special connection. And when you realize that about somebody else, you really treasure that connection. And so we've stayed in touch, and interviewing him just was an obvious thing we needed to do. One thing I want to add is that one thing I noticed in that retreat was that when Chess came in and sat down, he sat down right in front of Bentinho. And Bentinho came in, they had a moment where they really just kind of looked at each other in a very special way, as if they were acknowledging each other beyond what is physical, if you will. And we don't really talk about that in this interview, but I think you'll be able to detect that there's a depth and a wisdom to Chess that it would be evident by anybody, and certainly Bentinho witnessed that, and so shared a special moment with him. I'll just leave that there. There's nothing to really analyze about it, but something that we certainly noticed.
Yeah, Chess has spent his life basically guiding people toward the greater truth of themselves. And some of this was once more through outdoor quests to, outdoor adventures, in travels to remote parts of the world, to the wilderness, and now is much, and then too was about looking for the truth within through shedding what was without, basically externals, comfort, safety, looking for your edge, looking for the edge of who you think you are. And I think now he continues to do that in his home in Sedona, through much quieter, still practice and conversation and presence. And Stephen and I were just commenting that we sort of felt like we were doing that with him for ourselves through this conversation, which is...
You'll hear us asking a lot of questions that are really about us.
But I think that this is such a valuable conversation for anyone. Wow, you could just have an awakening listening to this interview. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited to release this.
One thing we talk a bit about is our van project. I mean, he brings it up because he's aware of it. And anyway, so we should just clarify that if you've not been following us, we're about a month away from departing Southern California in a converted Dodge Sprinter van. We're in the process of building that out now, and we're going to be heading on an adventure where we kind of have an open road in front of us without a whole lot of plans. We'll have a few kind of points set on the map, but we're going to head north to British Columbia and Banff, and then across those mountains, and then down from Calgary back through the States, ending up in Sedona in the fall. But we kind of want to have an open period of time where there's not a lot of planning, where we can exit this kind of matrix of mainstream patterns and living and roads and thinking and consuming and buying and et cetera, relating. We want to just leave all that behind, kind of enter into wilderness, if you will, and see what more organic, natural, truer patterns might be there, and maybe re-enter some point down the road, we don't really know when, with that intact. And so we explore that with Chess, so we wanted to give you some clarity as to what that is. And he speaks about it from experience, and he has a great deal of wisdom to share along that topic if it's interesting to you. One other quick thing before we go into the interview is we'd love to connect with you. Doing a podcast is wonderful. We connect with Chess through Skype, and we have this great conversation, then we release it, and it just sort of vanishes. We never know where it goes or who's listening. And so we're trying as best we can to open up that connection with people, so we know a little bit more about you and who's listening and who's digesting this content and what your thoughts are. We can be found on Facebook, facebook.com/Ownstream. That's a great place to connect with us. Twitter @Ownstream2. Instagram, we're really chronicling the van build and that project there. If that's particularly of interest to you, find us there at @own_stream. You'll see pictures of the van, and we'll be posting pictures from the trip on Instagram periodically as well. And then last but certainly not least, please sign up for our mailing list. That's where we'll let you know things about our own personal journey, a little more detail, content that we're developing. And then every Monday we have a weekly tip-off email where we share 3 really quick bite-sized nuggets of wisdom, tips, tools, whatever we've uncovered from the last week in the areas of lifestyle, business, and spirit. We like to share those things. And so we'd love for you to sign up for our mailing list, receive that information. We'll also let you know about podcasts as they come out too on a weekly basis. So you can find that at ownstream.co and just click the sign up button in the upper right hand corner of the screen and just fill in your information. We don't spam, we don't sell emails, nothing like that. It's a sincere, I think, connection. We'll share with you viable, honest, hopefully helpful content. Mm-hmm. So we'll leave it at that. That's enough from us. We'll be back afterwards to quickly wrap up. But until then, please deeply enjoy this wonderful conversation with Jess Edwards.
You know how it is, boy, when you're right on the wilderness, it's easier. And I got to remember that, when we're working with people who don't have that not only daily, but moment-to-moment reminder of what life really is. They're so consumed in the dream. They're so consumed in the, I live in a city. I get on the subway. I go to work, and I'm trying to remember what life's really about.
Oh, yeah. We did that for many, many years.
Yeah,
We're still trying to unravel the effects of the New York City lifestyle, I think. Yeah. I would say, one very common one is that we live in a 9-to-5 emotional and mental reality, the two of us.
Monday through
Friday, 9 to 5, and we're kind of trying to disentangle that dream illusion that has so much power over us still, I think. So.
Yeah, the nature of our trip is repatterning. That's the word that came up through a conversation that we had with some tiny house folks about 3 or 4 months ago, and they had quote fulfilled the American dream. I put up air quotes because they had a big house, they had a kid, they had all the stuff, and they looked around. They're like, this is
and
terrible.
No time for each other.
They don't spend any time with each other.
No joy in their lives. I don't know. I want to say no joy. That's not what they said, but
They sold it all, and they extracted themselves from it and just went into a neutral environment for a period of time to kind of see what was more natural and to let go of those things, those patterns, those routines, those habitual kind of those structures that are implanted on us but not maybe innate or not maybe true for each of us. So anyway, it really struck us, and we were in Sedona back in the late winter, and we were walking around, I think it was Cathedral Rock, and it sort of hit us. It sort of came tumbling off the mesa and hit us both at the same time, whereas we have to do this. We need to be in nature. We need to pull ourselves away from any and all semblance of that kind of matrix of mainstream patterning, and for an extended period of time to see what's organically there.
Well, you've touched on something I think is really important, which is the neutral space. To go from the conditional habitual patterning to all right, I'm going to really dive into and open up to my, spiritual nature or whatever the journey is that one is on, to shift from one thing to another. To leap from one into the other can become as much of a pattern as the first, that neutral space of nothing, to say, you know what, maybe if I just let it all go for a while. Otherwise, we're replacing less valuable or supportive or disempowering beliefs with more empowering beliefs, but it's still replacing a belief system with a belief system. So to drop all belief systems for a while and wander through the wilderness, to stop all trying to be, needing to be, shifting, this is who I'm going to be now. And I did that a couple of years ago, and it was pivotal to where I am now. Was a friend suggested, she said, maybe just stop everything. We market our business, we market ourselves, who we are, what do I do, how do I name that, how do I speak to that, how am I showing up in the world, and we bring attention to that, and that's good. And she recognized that I was bringing so much attention to it, it was just becoming another identity. So she said, maybe you just stop doing everything. And it was hard. I was living in San Diego, about 20 minutes from the beach. And for a month, well, I told myself for a month I was going to go on a retreat in my own home. And I would every day go to the beach and that spaciousness, let myself walk in the spaciousness and start to let go into the spaciousness. Well, that turned into 3 months of, okay, no, I'm still not ready to emerge yet. There's still, the defragmentation is still happening and parts are still falling away. But it took a while to stop needing to identify and name, okay, now where is this going?
Yeah. Oh boy. Really
identify.
Cool.
Yeah.
And during, so I'd love to just explore that a little bit, because it sounds like sort of what you're describing is you began to listen to something that had a wisdom that you trusted more than, say, your plan or voices from the outside. And that voice, that intuition, higher self, however any person may want to call it, talk about kind of getting closer to that voice and the decision, what that decision is to trust that, to give yourself to that, and to allow it to have its way in all the beautiful ways that it does.
For me, it was, I love these conversations because, it asks us to really look at and explore and name what happened. What was this journey? A lot of my life has been spent on the personal development because I was a mess. It's a lot of struggle, a lot of defensive walls, a lot of wounding, a lot of betrayal, self-betrayal, betrayal of life. I was the wounded guy walking through life trying to find some peace. And I identified that, yes, some peace can be found through the personal development, to learn how to, love myself, but it was still the physical bound self. Not the spiritual nature of self, but to love this human man who is trying to know himself as love. So the personal development was necessary for a long time. But then when you say how to listen to that, which is beyond self, I think those early walks on the beach were still just trying to find a more peaceful ego self. Once that happened through the personal development, then I could really start opening up to the spiritual development, which was to say, oh, I'm starting to recognize that there is a self beyond anything that I think, anything that I feel. There's an eternal, infinite nature of self that is, I've never really known how to listen to that. So it took that neutral time of being kinder in my own thoughts, being more generous and spacious in my own thoughts, but not leaving it there. Oh, good, now I can think more calmly, with more love, with more kindness. That was only so that I could then completely let go of the idea of a separate self and expand into the infinite nature of self, where I was listening then to, as you know, infinite, universes of wisdom and feeling, sensation and knowing. It wasn't coming from my mind. It was coming through the heart. It was coming through the experience, the bodily experience of beyond mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if, we could go back a little bit and talk about, so a lot of people are in pain, right? And you talk about that wounded self, and I think a lot of people could identify with that. But a lot of people just live that way their whole lives, right? And think that something's wrong with them, but don't ever get a lot further than that, or blame others, or just feel in pain. And life takes various trajectories that end up being determined or guided by that pain more than anything else, you know? So can you talk a little bit about, more specifically if you want, about what that was like, but more importantly about like what made you see that something was wrong and that you wanted, that there could be something else, and that you wanted to pursue that something else in the first place?
Yeah. Well, you spoke right to it. It's the pain. You know, it was, I think when we feel enough pain or discomfort or anxiety or suffering or sense of not belonging or who am I or where am I, just all the unanswered questions and the angst, the emptiness that can come with those. It can be described in so many different ways. But that was the indicator that says something's wrong. So, and of course, yes, we do name it as ourselves. Something's wrong. And since I only feel that I am either my physical, mental, or emotional self, it must be me. And all it is a wrong looking. All it is it's a false perception. Mm-hmm. That's what's wrong. And so the kind of go back to that nature of the first thing I think we really do need to do is start to disentangle some of the emotional wounding. Rescripting, as you were saying, reprogramming, you know, getting a different way of living as a human to relax that enough so that then what might start to open up is, oh my gosh, now there's something even beyond that, you know, this deeper, more expansive knowing of self. So for me, it was just the incredible pain that seemed so different than my natural state of being. Mm-hmm. So recently I found a photo of me when I was a little baby.
Yeah.
And I'm looking over the crib, you know, and I've got this look of wonder on my face. You know, you could tell I'm kind of looking out into the world going, holy cow, this is amazing. I can't wait to get out of this crib and go play and all of that.
We got
so
one of those in the
I
next
knew
room.
Yes, exactly.
It's very much like that.
Yeah. So I knew innately, like we all do, that life was precious and that life is magnificent and it's a remarkable exploration. And then the reality of the betrayal. We're all born into a life of betrayal because most adults we know, most teachers and authority figures and media and society is all telling us, so entranced in the illusion of separation, and all we are is physicality and mental state and emotional state. That's it. Mm-hmm. Completely forgetting the spiritual nature. So that started to create enough suffering in life. And then early on, some deep wounding early on with the human betrayals and abuses. And so I went out to the wilderness initially. That was my way of trying to find this preciousness that I knew existed in the world. Where can I find it? And it was still out there. Mm-hmm. So it was going to be in Nepal, or it was going to be in South America, or it was going to be in Baja. And I guided adventure travel trips for almost 30 years, wandering about in all these amazing places, finding all this remarkable magic, but not trusting that was within me. So that was kind of the initial journey out, and then finally the pain just continued.
Surprise!
Surprise! Yeah. And that's what led me to then starting to really look at, all right, you know, what else is available? What else might be possible? And it's only through the meditations now and through the teachings that I've been blessed with of those who are able to guide me beyond the small self to a eternal self that has brought more of the peace.
You know, a few themes that I want to be sure to cover with you, Chess, are leadership and adventure, because I have a feeling your personal journey could be tracked through both of those themes. At least as I read, at least based on what we know about you, it would be very interesting to hear you talk to that. But I guess for our listeners' sake, it'd be good for you to maybe share about those trips and those adventures. And on your site, you talk about being an adventurer, and maybe share about how that emerged, what that looked like early on, and then, well, there's a follow-up question to that. I'll ask if it's relevant. You may actually already answer it, but I think it'd be very interesting to hear you share about those details and kind of how that happened and what that looked like.
You know, it's an interesting question because as you ask it, there's a part of me that thinks it's all irrelevant.
I know.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like, geez, we're gonna go back up to the Earth's surface here for a few minutes, but I get it.
But we're kind of interested too in how that concept of adventurer has evolved for you too.
Totally. Yeah.
And it does completely relate in the fact that I think our exploration into what's really happening. Who am I? How does this life work? How does this all piece together? What's the truth I can't yet see? I don't yet know. That's an adventure. Mm-hmm. So it brings to mind for me the idea of edges. I was very fortunate to have a family, and especially a father, who was always prompting me to look beyond what I could see.
Oh, wow.
He was always about trying to find a different way of doing things. He didn't want any of his kids to be the sheep in life. If we'd go into a place that had multiple lines and everyone was just queuing up to the first line they see, he was the guy who would stop and look around and say, now, is there another way of doing this? Can we get where we're trying to go with a bit more attention and maybe find the path? Find the easier way. So he was always guiding me to that. And that's what led me out into the world of adventure, was that sense of, I don't know. I want to expand myself to the point of discomfort and explore into and put myself at risk and find out what may be there that I don't yet know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's our spiritual journey, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And so the guiding was always that I would go to a place first, and typically with other good guides, and I would experience it. So my first trips to the Himalayas, to Nepal, were with a dear, dear friend of mine who had been there many times, and he would take me, and I'd go and just get my mind blown. And then I would come back and I would gather up people here in the States and I would take them. And the whole idea was I was saying, look, there's a threshold that needs to be crossed. Mm-hmm. There's this life that you know. And to some degree, there's a part of you that knows that it has become too small and too routine and habitual. And it doesn't feel as alive as it maybe once did. And so maybe it's time to go exploring out to the edge of your comfort zone and let me be your guide. And I'll help guide you out to this threshold and help cross the threshold into this new place of new language, new feelings, new experience, new tastes, new sights, new emotions. All of it's going to be new. And as you guys know, when you go traveling, all your senses come alive. Your body goes, okay, we got to really pay attention. So what a wonderful thing to say to people, let's go traveling. They come alive with attention and are that much more available to see and feel and hear and absorb what may be happening. And then for them to start to reflect back on their life and go, oh my God, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see how small it had become, and in different ways I had become trapped and tired and exhausted. The colors had lost their vibrancy. And then from this place, they can go back, cross the threshold again, and go back and make some conscious choices about now, not just what do I want to do differently, but how do I want to be differently. So that's where I think adventure really plays the role. It's about going out to the edge of I don't know, rather than I'll trust my spiritual nature once it's proven itself to me to be, safe, to be okay. We got to go through the void. We got to cross that threshold of the unknown and be uncomfortable and stay there long enough and not just travel the comfortable bus.
Yeah.
That always drove me nuts when people would say, "Oh, I hear you lead tours."
Oh, yeah.
And I'd be like,
Tours.
Tours. To lead our lives as travelers and not tourists.
Yeah.
There's a great quote that says, travelers don't know where they're going. Tourists don't know where they've been.
Jeez. I remember when I was really young, I was 22 or 23, and I worked for this dance company, and we had this trip, a tour to Paris and Venice, and it was this magic itinerary. We had these performances, and everybody was so excited for me to go. I was excited myself, and I remember going and kind of putting my head down, and admittedly, I was there to work and do things, although I have found over the years that working somewhere actually brings you further into it than just kind of bouncing on the edges of the tourist sites. But I remember coming back and thinking, I don't think I actually went there. I was.
Oh, wow.
I remember being there, getting on the plane and kind of, but the expectation of being in some new place and having it open to me it never happened. And it was through those types of experiences that I was led into this inquiry of like, well, what does it mean to really be somewhere? What does it mean to really be here? Like, what would that actually be like to be here and absorb and receive this moment as it is? And that was kind of an entry point for me into spirituality, into my own kind of spiritual life, which has taken me on this incredible adventure since then. But maybe I'd love for you to talk about any experiences like that, or how, maybe more generally, travel and adventure have kind of gone from an outer exploration into a spiritual inner exploration or journey.
Yeah. It's as I get older, I get fatter. And one of the reasons is because I find so much adventure sitting here on my meditation cushion that I'm going places and I'm opening into the experiences that are as grand as any adventure I've ever had, trekking out to the far reaches of where I've never been before. How cool is it that I can sit down and close my eyes and within moments be finding myself in places I've never been before, not visually, but just experientially, feeling these openings of, oh my God, I thought I had a full sense of this spacious, eternal nature, and then something else unfolds, and you go, oh, I wasn't even close.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So the transition, I think the spirit of adventure is carried through all the way along. And it's probably most aligned with the ability to say, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't need to. Maybe this is a good one. The tourist wants to stay safe, and therefore they will not have the grander adventures. I always wanted people to come back from my trips, and when people said, "How was your trip?" I didn't want them to say, "It was nice." I took a lot of nice photos. We ate good food. We saw a lot of neat things. I wanted them, when people said, "How was your trip?" I wanted them to say, "Oh my God, we almost died like several times." And that's what it is, that we allow ourselves to die. We allow parts of ourselves that have been comfortable to fall away, and to allow whatever is present to arise. This is one of the natures of the meditative experience. Everything arises so that it may pass. Mm-hmm. So allowing our discomfort to arise, allowing the question of, who am I? Really, like, who am I? And to encounter initially a void. I don't know. It's like walking around in a foreign city and going, I feel pretty vulnerable. I don't speak the language. I don't know anyone here. Maybe I should just go back to my hotel where it's nice and comfortable. But no, I'm going to keep walking. I'm going to keep experiencing. I'm going to keep opening up. And this is the meditative experience of sitting in. I'm asking questions, and I'm not getting answers initially. And can that be okay? Can I keep wandering down these streets and these alleyways, just putting one foot in front of the other until things start to make sense and start to feel more alive, and experiences start to open up that I wouldn't have encountered had I not kept taking the next step and not retreating back to the comfort and the safety of what I believe is going to keep me safe. Mm-hmm. And then this knowing now, of course I'm safe. I'm eternal. The true nature of self is eternal. It's infinite. I can wander down any street I want. I can sit in any spaciousness. I can encounter any darkness. And even though it feels like I can be completely destroyed, yay, let that part of me who thinks it can be destroyed be destroyed. Mm-hmm. So that it leaves that part of me that can never be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This may be more of a comment than a question, but I just have to say it's so resonant to exactly where we are, and maybe where we've always been. But, we're on the cusp of selling our really comfortable condo in Encinitas, and we're moving into a camper van that has not yet been built out and has nothing in it as of today. And a month from today, we're supposed to, be moving in with our baby. And we've been having exactly this conversation about why we're not staying comfortable. And I'm interested, I guess, in thinking about these journeys we take. I mean, Stephen and I were just watching a video last night from a trip we took about a year ago. And we've had so many of these breaks from our routine, breaks from our comfort that were a few days in length, or a couple weeks, or in one case, 5 months. And we have these rich conversations, but also just rich experiences of presence and our true selves, I think, in these moments. And then we would end up in the same, or another version of the same routine, another version of the same home. And then again come up with that pain and that dissatisfaction with the pattern of our life. And so now we're really on this cusp of trying to really break with the pattern of our lives, And I think I love what you're talking about, I guess, about this, the importance of getting uncomfortable, the importance of embracing not knowing, and what can come from that. And I'm curious about, I'm interested in how you produced this for people on these trips, and I'm also interested in how to sustain that and how to continue it, and how to keep the work going, so not to go back into the same pattern, because we've experienced that so many times, and every time I think we get a little further, and we get a little greater glimpse, and it's a journey, right? But I am curious about, through your own experience and how you've worked with others, how you see that sustained, or how you work forward to keep it moving, I guess, in the direction of truth.
God, isn't that the ultimate? Yeah, I mean, I love the theme of adventure. It's a perfect one to be on today, because we've all had this experience. You come back from the adventure, And you say, yes, I know now, and things are going to be different. But we are surrounded by, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, there's a spiritual deficit around us, and it creates a vacuum, and it is hard to sustain and feed that part of ourselves on a regular basis. And people will often say, coming back from a trip, how do I hold on to this? How do I hold on to this? And the image I have is the hand grasping. How do I hold on? And you look at a grasped hand, it has no room for anything else. So rather than it's how do I hold on to this, it's having the open hand, open experience, and say, not hold on, but how do I simply hold this so that it can, like a baby, like, you've got a new baby. How do I just hold this so that it can grow and it can mature and it can expand? I think for me, and the way I work with my students, is it comes right down to it every time. It's discipline. It's dedication. It is repeated action. It is repeatedly with discipline and dedication and love, putting down everything that we're not. That's probably the biggest thing, putting down everything that we're not. So you're walking away from that which doesn't serve you deliberately, wholly, not a little bit, wholly, so that this new experience can take root. And you guys know this through your own meditative practices, that when we put down what we're not, who we are is already there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be constructed. It doesn't have to be cultivated, but our relationship to the truth of who we are, our true nature, our eternal nature, that is already there, always present, that relationship needs to be cultivated through our practices, through our awareness. And so I one of the analogies I use is there's two that are kind of fun. One is emptying the backpack, which is, so I was trekking one day in Nepal, and my friend Gambu Sherpa all day long was putting little rocks on my backpack and in my little open pockets and such. He was walking behind me because he noticed that I wouldn't take my day pack off during the day. I'd leave it on all day long. Even when we sat to rest, I'd never take it off. So he just kept filling it with rocks. And by the end of the day, I take off my backpack like, holy cow, I'm tired today, right? And I think what we do in our moments of stillness, in our presence, is we are taking off our backpack throughout the day, whether it's a 10-second moment of stillness or a half an hour meditation, and we just take off our backpack and we actually dump it out, mm-hmm. empty of the conditioning, emptying of I got to do anything, emptying of I have to be anything, empty it all out. And then when we get up from our meditation, we can put on an empty backpack, and then we see what needs to fill. We see what we do need to carry and be attentive to. But it's different than just trying to relax a little bit and peering into a dark backpack and saying, oh, anything here I got to get rid of, and rummaging through it. Just dump it all out. Dump it all. And I think the idea for most people is they think in their early meditations that they've got to empty their mind of thoughts, and it's, madness will ensue.
Yes.
The first thing we encounter when we want to be more peaceful is all the ways we're not peaceful. The first thing we encounter when we want to be more still are all the ways we're not still. Mm-hmm. So instead of emptying the mind of thoughts, is to recognize that all thoughts are empty. They're just empty. They're thoughts. Where do they come from? They just came from our little conditioned minds. Mm-hmm. So they have no real weight to them. We're just making them up. So let them come. Let the thoughts come, and then they pass. So one analogy is emptying out the backpack and letting it all go. And that's what you guys are doing. You're walking away. You're not doing a little change. You're really shifting the dynamic mm-hmm. greatly, and going to be taking on a new practice of being and sustaining it for months and months. Mm-hmm. The old habit of self falls away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So discipline, I don't know. I mean, we know it all we talk to people all the time. First thing I ask people when, they talk about an imbalance, anxiety, a dissatisfaction, how much stillness is there in your life? And almost every time there's a sigh. Oh, yeah, not nearly enough. Like, right, what are you doing to bring stillness into your life? Yeah, nothing. How's it working for you?
Yeah, right.
I want to sigh on that one.
What I was thinking about while you were talking was, when you were walking the beach, what maybe we could kind of zoom in on that particular redirection, if you will. Maybe talk about kind of what that became for you. So you thought it would be this long, and then it turned into much longer.
Yeah.
And then maybe how you re-entered, or what you began, how you repatterned from there, listening to something more organic, something more whole in yourself.
Perfect. The letting go of needing to do anything that I thought was going to sustain me, the little me, the physical, mental, emotional sense of self. Letting that all go, surrendering, and breaking the habit of having to do that, breaking the habit of trying to define myself. And having that go into that 3 months. It allowed it I don't know how else to put it than that it created a habit of surrender. Let me do this every day. Stop. Oh, that's the word. It's stop. This is Gangaji's teaching from her teacher, Papaji, his teaching. Just stop. Stop looking. Because I was, still looking for, I know I can have more peace. I know that I'm not awakened into a full true knowing of true nature. I'm still, where is that? How do I get it? How do I make it happen? And this was the stopping of all of that. Mm-hmm. So in my meditations changed. My meditations changed from sitting with a desire to have an outcome. Maybe in this meditation, something will shift,
yes, right.
Right. And that led to, I knew I wanted another teacher, a more physical teacher, because my teachers had been a lot of online teachers, which is so beautiful nowadays that we have that opportunity. And we can dedicate ourselves to following a teacher and their teachings and practicing what they're teaching. And before I tell you about that, another major thing that happened was something shifted where I thought, what if I actually took everything that's unfolding in the personal development and the spiritual development and just applied it without question? Be like a teacher who says, go do this. And it's like, all right, what if I just had such a devotion that I just practice these things without constantly, it's like meditating with the one eye open. Is it working now? Is it working now? Is it working now? Looking for the evidence.
Yeah.
What if I practice without looking for evidence? What if I stop going back to God and saying, tell me again? Tell me again? What if I just devoted myself to surrendering to the teaching and living it? Mm-hmm. That was huge. And so I asked for another teacher, and within a week, a friend of mine said, oh, this man named Sat Shri had come to Encinitas and spoken at Eve's restaurant. And she said, you might want to check him out. I checked him out online. I was digging what he was saying, called him. He asked me to come be with him for a week in Nevada, where he lives. And I went, and he invited me to actually stay at his home and not in one of the student housings. And I sat with him for a week in meditation. And surrendering. And on the third day, I remember this feeling of completely emptying the self. The ego body just said, what if I just got out of the way? Because it become quite obvious that the ego self was completely built on beliefs and thoughts. And it was really clear that those were just coming from me and my conditioning. And the insanity was obvious. Why would I lead an entire life guided by things that I'm making up from a childhood and from the bullying and from all these things, and I'm trying to stay safe, and I'm making all of this up, and I'm actually leading my life based on things that I'm making up. So that became, the insanity became obvious. I dropped all of that in this one meditation, and it was like the divine just said, thank you. Now I have room to pour through you. You've emptied, you've purified. I can pour through you now and move from the unmanifest into the manifest. So I'm enlivened with that sense of freedom, of devotion and surrender and giving myself over to something other than the separate self. And that afternoon I wrote in my journal, I said, I think I'm done with San Diego. I don't know what it is, but I'm done with San Diego. I've been living there 15 years. I own a beautiful house on a lake, but I'm done. Within 6 hours, I get a text from a friend of mine that says, hey, would you consider moving to Seattle? There's this beautiful opportunity with a neurofeedback institute that needs a meditation teacher, and this might be a great opportunity. Within a month, I was packed up, packed my house, rented it out to others, and moved. Gone. And it was all, and throughout that whole process was a ton of surrender. Letting go of control, letting go of the way I thought it needed to be, letting go of what if. Friends were saying, don't rent your house out. What if it doesn't work out? And it was just, no, I'm moving now. I'm moving on. I'm like you guys are doing. I'm getting up and I am moving into the unknown. And I'm allowing that to happen. The job in Seattle fell apart. It was the wrong place to be. And within a month, there I was standing in Seattle without a job, without a place to live, without my home to go back to in San Diego. And that's when Sedona showed up and opened up. And it was obvious that the whole thing, from me saying, I'm getting out of the way, I'm surrendering to be in service to the divine, that it said, okay, well, first of all, you got to get out of San Diego. You got to move. You got to uproot. You got to change the routine. So I'm going to give you this opportunity that you think is the opportunity why you're moving. No, it's just to get your ass out of San Diego. And ever since then, it has been a constant stream of surrender. Every meditation, every conversation is letting go of where I think it needs to go or what I think it needs to be, and just being present to what's happening now. Not, oh, this is going a little squirrely and it's not going where I thought. Oh, nope, just what's happening now. One foot in front of the other.
There's so many things I want to add.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about discipline and what your meditation practice looks like, but is there anywhere you wanted to go first from there? There's so many.
Maybe there's a maybe we can merge our questions, because I think they're similar in that. Although I'm skeptical as to why I'm asking this, but I'll ask it anyway. But What is it? So you went through this process, and you're left with this practice of surrender. What does it look like? Like how does this appear, if you will, in the world? And even the specific things of like, I eat this, or I wake up then, or I have an alarm clock, or I don't, or whatever. Kind of those kind of logistics are trivial for sure, but at the same time can be very revealing, I think, within this context.
And in that, I want to ask something along with that. In that process, a lot of people, if it had fallen through in Seattle, might have thought, well, I was wrong, I'm going back. What is that? Yeah, in action, that surrender, like what might come up in your mind or something, and then what is present that you're following. And I'm curious about the mechanics of that too.
Two things come to mind. One of them is my favorite phrase by Adyashanti, which just is the definition of what is, because we hear that phrase, be with what is. Well, it's helpful to get a deeper understanding of that, and it's simply what is what is happening just before you have a thought about it. What is what is happening just before you have a thought about it. So it doesn't mean, because it's a good question. People will actually they'll think, well, if I just surrender, I'll become a blob. I'll sit on the couch and eat Cheetos and, watch reruns or something, binge watch something. But what happens is, no, we do go about our lives and we do make choices and we do make decisions and we do move forward. And what happens is that our ego's drive subsides. And at first, without that, which has been driving us our entire life, we're left with, I've got no motivation. There's nothing driving me anymore. But if we sit with it long enough, what we find is our eternal nature starts to drive us. The divine nature starts to drive us. And we just start to recognize that as more powerful and alive and huge and juicy and vibrant than anything our ego drive would have come up with. Because ego drive is just trying to keep us safe and fulfilled and abundant. But so the surrender is surrendering to what might be possible when we let go of our small way of seeing through life. So the alarm still goes off and we go through our day. But then when anything happens, we just come back to, oh, this is just what's happening. If I take away my thought about it, it's good, it's bad, it's really good, it's really bad, it's fantastic, I just let it happen, then I can just be more present to everything that shows up. Does that answer part of that?
Sure.
Then the pivotal thing for me was the meditative practice of inquiry. When I was able to really start asking into, and this is the beauty of all the really good teachers, and Bentinho speaks about this so beautifully as well, but it's really asking into, who am I really? Prior to all conditioning, prior to all thoughts, all beliefs. Gangaji speaks of this. Who am I prior to even to this birth? Because everything that lives and dies is temporary, transient. This form is transient. These thoughts are transient. This image of self is transient. What is it that maintains and sustains and that is eternal prior to that, while this is all happening and after this form passes? In really opening to that and getting not a mental idea of it, but a experiential bodily knowing fully of that truth of self, all worry, all control, all sense of manipulation of having to have it be a certain way, for me, drops away. Because I'm no longer trying to defend or maintain or prop up or prove this image that is solely made up in my mind. I mean, literally, it feels often like somebody could just come up and put a gun to my head, and it would be, yes, I'd rather you not. I'd really rather you not. If I have a choice here, I'd really rather you not. And if so, then what is what is happening just before I have a thought about it. It's just an event that will occur, and my eternal nature will be just fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could unpack for us what a day looks like for you. Like what does like a day look like in this practice for you? I'm curious for people who may, I don't know, all kinds of people listening to this actually, but just how you're practicing this, like on the day-to-day decision and in the day-to-day discipline and practice.
The day-to-day discipline is beyond the meditative practice, which I'll speak to. The idea of how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. So I get up in the morning, and the first thing I do is I have a glass of water with lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. Mm. And I do it every single day. And this is the practicality of I've been respiring all night, and so I'm dehydrated. I like my coffee in the morning. So if I take a dehydrated body and pour coffee into it, my body's going, are you kidding me? This is not a good combination. Right. So I do it for that reason, but I also do it for the reason of recognizing there's a self-care, there's a self-love, and that's part of the discipline. When I go outside to feed the birds in the morning, I live here on the wilderness, and I go out to feed the quail and doves and all that. I put on my sandals. I go out and do that. When I come back and I take my sandals off, I don't just kick my sandals off and let them flop wherever. I set them side by side. There practically, is there a reason for that? Probably not. But there's something that says just be attentive to each moment and that everything matters. And that starts to translate into then maybe I have a conversation with somebody. And rather than it just being this conversation where we're both blabbing on about whatever, I'm trained myself to be attentive to what's being said right now. Does this really matter? What's this other person saying? What are they really saying? So my discipline, my day looks like moving about my life, being very attentive to opening my closet, getting a shirt out, instead of just leaving the closet open. No, I close the door again. That's how my day unfolds. Mm-hmm. And then it does all the things that we all do in our day-to-day life. Does that kind of give a sense of what a day looks like?
Yeah, and then I'm curious about your meditation practice too, what that looks like. Although that all is some meditation practice also, I think, but what you described.
Yeah, I meditated for about a minute once a month. That's enough. No. Whoa! I don't have time to meditate. It's this beautiful thing now where when I sit within 2 breaths, there's such a sense of, I don't know that I've been looking forward to it, but it's this immediate sense of, yay, I love this. I love this moment. And the meditation now is primarily, I play with it and do different things with it. But primarily it's a meditation of inquiry, which is to sit. I sit about sometime during the morning. I start working with clients and students usually around 9 or so. I get up around 5. Mm-hmm. I have my water. I have my coffee. I sit. I take out my journal. Every morning I journal. Some days I write a lot. Other days I sit with a pen and write nothing. Mm. But I allow myself just to inquire into what wants to be spoken, what wants to show up. You'll notice a lot of times if you follow my Facebook stuff, I'll post a lot of stuff in the morning. It's because that's when, there's this stillness that allows life to speak. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I'll just be like, this is good. But I journal, and then I'll come and I'll sit. And the sitting is 20 minutes, half hour. I used to set a timer. I don't anymore. Now I just sit for as long as it feels appropriate to sit. And the inquiry I'll play with different things. Who am I prior to all mind, prior to all thought? A real fun one has been, where am I?
Yeah.
Where am I? Where this thing called consciousness, this self that exists prior to thoughts and is always aware, always present, no matter what weird stuff my mind's coming up with. Where is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where does that exist? Oh, it's not the body. It's not the emotions. It's not my mind. And so here's an interesting thing that happened recently. So for a long time, you guys, I had to have this sense of larger self, let's say, eternal self, and it had to be separate out of this body. So I carried it, and it was kind of up and behind me. Mm-hmm. And it was this witness. And whenever I was going through a difficult struggle, it would be witnessing it. And I'd recognize, as Gangaji often asks, she'll say, this part of you that's struggling is your true nature, your eternal nature, your true self. Is it struggling? Mm-hmm. No, it's at peace. Mm-hmm. The truth of self is at peace. This human experience is currently in a struggle. My ego is in a struggle. My witnessing self is not struggling. It's just lovingly witnessing with no agenda and no judgment. So that I've started to separate. And there are those two aspects of self, and the higher self existed up and behind me. And then as more and more as the reality of, wow, this collection of thoughts and beliefs that I'm not. So I can let that go. As that emptied, one day about 2 months ago, it emptied enough that this thing I'd been, this true, eternal, spacious, connected to everything, oneness self that had been up behind, not only up and behind me, but then it just incorporated the whole universe. It went, oh, good, you've emptied enough. And it literally just flowed down and occupied the human space. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The belief structure had been defragmented enough, had loosened enough that it was able to fall away. And so then from there on, it's been that the experience of life has been that this wholeness of self is right there behind my eyes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'd love to hear you define ego. You just used that word. Mm. It's a bit of a it's become millions of things, and I've recently come into an understanding of it, which is different than what it used to be, and I realize I had this notion of the ego as being actually smaller than I now see it as being. Uh-huh. And I'm curious as to how you would define it and how you teach others what that concept means.
Yeah. Just before I speak to that, I also meditate every evening. Uh-huh. And for a long time, it was the end of the day thing, and I couldn't imagine meditating at night. Like, I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I'm done. And what I found now is that I can be tired, and I'll choose my evening. If I like watching movies at night and such, and or I'll take a bath and I'll open my laptop and watch one of my teachers and let that happen. But I try to have all that done by 9:30. So I won't start watching a movie past 7:30 at the latest, because after that I want to come sit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I will be tired. I'll be like, oh boy, okay, well, nope, I'm going to sit. I'll light my candles on the altar. I'll sit. And you guys, 45 minutes later go by, and I'm not tired in the least. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm alive. I feel whole. I feel beautiful. I feel alive. And to take that into dream space. So last night, my meditation toward the end was an affirmation that said, I'm ready to receive some guidance from my spirit, from my eternal nature, my spirit guides. I'm ready to receive some guidance tonight. I'm ready to receive some guidance tonight. I went to bed with that thought. Oh, wow. And sure enough, the dream space was beautiful, and all sorts of things came through.
Interesting.
So I think it's good to play with our meditations as well. It's a wonderful opportunity it's a gathering of our awareness. Mm-hmm. This is a good way to think of it. Our meditation is a gathering of our awareness, gathering it in where we can then gently point it to an inquiry. We can gently point it to a feeling within us. We can gently point it to a sense of manifestation, manifesting a feeling. How do I want to feel in life? But it's a gathering of our awareness so we can gently point our awareness to something other than the mind chatter. Yeah. So then, I'm sorry. What was
the ego?
Just the ego.
The ego. Boy, I don't know really the best way to describe it. What's feeling alive for me these days is that the ego is simply the illusion of separation. Mm-hmm. Any thought of self that still feels separate from one is the ego body. It's identified primarily with the lower light bodies of physicality, the physical self, the mental self, the emotional self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's encapsulated in that. It's in the form, the world of form, and it is divorced from and disconnected from and not abiding in the infinite eternal spirit of self. So it's anything that isn't spirit is the ego body.
The ego, yeah. Michael Langford's book, I don't know if you've read it, but The Direct Means to Eternal Bliss. It's a very straightforward, beautiful book of meditation and something Bentinho recommends. Anyway, he talks about the ego as being all that arises due to that separation, all of the beliefs, all of the structures, everything that kind of falls, everything that is replaced, that we use to replace ineffectively this eternal kind of large capital S self that is our eternal nature. So everything else is the ego, and he refers to it as the imposter. He's very, I guess, kind of aggressive about it, which is
good,
helpful.
Good.
And so to piggyback on that, maybe you've also used the word illusion, and something you shared, speaking of Facebook, since you brought that up, you put this the other day: when we truly and wholeheartedly abide in eternal truth, we lose the inclination and need to argue with those addicted to illusion.
Yeah.
And this is something I think we've experienced a lot recently. And as you begin to kind of change, as you make when you make strong change on the outside, like when we told our family, hey, we're going to move into a camper van with our 1-year-old, that gives cause for questions and all of their egoic representations to manifest. So we're kind of in this boat of the illusion versus what we know to be real. And it'd be interesting to hear you talk about that quote. What is the illusion, and ways that you do kind of remove yourself from engaging with those addicted to it?
This is so ripe. Imagine standing being at a party, and it's a brightly lit room, and you've gone over to a window that looks out into the night. Mm-hmm. And there's some lights on out there. Maybe there's a pool out there, and some of the trees are lit up. But as you're looking out this window, this glass, primarily what you see, because it's a brightly lit room, is you see your own reflection, and you see the party happening behind you, right? And that's the first thing that you see. When we learn to shift our focus, we start to see through, and we can do this, right? We can go, oh, let me just shift my gaze. And now I can see through the glass, and there's a tree out there and it's lit up. And, I'm thinking of like a house up in the Hollywood Hills overlooking LA and such. And I can look out and I can see lights out there, and I can see the pool, and I've chosen to stop being focused on the reflection and this whole party going on, and there's me. There's this image of me, and all of a sudden I'm outside seeing into the vastness that goes on and on and on forever, into the heavens, into the universes, into the... So the illusion is the illusion is the stories that our mind tells us. All the stories our mind tells us, based on all of our conditioning, that we are, the nature of who we are primarily and predominantly is the emotional, mental, and physical self. That's the illusion. Mm-hmm. And everything that we believe about it. This is the one that really shifted for me, was really recognizing and getting through the meditative spaciousness of just feeling into it over and again. Wow, I am believing my thoughts. And where did my thoughts come from? Me. Based on what? Based on all my conditioning, and based on the thoughts that came prior, and based on bad teaching, based on media and society and fear and doubt and all of that. So for me, the illusion is, and the illusion that I encounter out in the world is, again, everything that doesn't recognize the true eternal nature of self. That's the illusion. Everything that is entranced in the illusion that we are anything other than the true eternal spirit of life.
And I was going to, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to follow that by sort of pulling onto that then, if that's the illusion, I wanted to say, how would you define the truth? And then also, there's what feel like troubling times around us, right? And that quote that Stephen said, when you said we lose the inclination and need to argue with those addicted to illusion, I was thinking about all the turmoil in the world right now, and that a lot of people want to change it, but a lot of the desire for change is within the illusion itself, and you have a lot of arguing happening, and it's because there's a lot of buying into the illusion. So what is the truth? And then, how is your life aimed? Because I think it is both at the quest for that truth and in service of that truth. How can you serve that truth?
Yeah. By not arguing against it. But you said it perfectly. The argument happens within the illusion as well. And we know we can't define the truth, and none of us can say this is the absolute truth. We can just keep pointing toward it. And yet, having said that, there's a lot of contradictions in all the teachings. Having said that, in the flow of a conversation, I'll be perfectly comfortable getting to a place of saying, you know what? The truth is, we are love. The truth is that is the nature of the fabric of life. It's the love, and we are the love. And I'll feel comfortable saying, yes, that is a truth. And then, having said that, I'll find a contradiction in it later on, which says, "Oh, what came before the love? The absolute. We are actually that." But so I would say the truth is to be found for each individual, and it is what is the spacious freedom that resides when all thoughts and beliefs fade and are dropped. What's there? What's there before all story, all definition? What is there that cannot be defined? And can I tell you what that is? What it's going to feel like? No. I can tell you, yeah, there's a freedom and a spaciousness there, and an aliveness, but it's beyond description. The idea of not wanting to argue with those who are addicted to the illusion, there's so much to explore within this spaciousness, this aliveness, that I'm finding that all I want to do is explore that deeper, to be in it deeper, and to have that be my conversation, my where I abide, where I reside, and in those conversations with those around me, if there's an interest, a willingness, a desire, a curiosity, I'm happy to engage in that conversation. To help somebody who's saying, this feels good. How do I get there? What's the way about it? But the arguing for the limitation and the addiction to the safety of ego, I'm perfectly comfortable saying, yeah, if that's okay, this isn't residing, this isn't feeling strong for you, this is not where you are. Beautiful. Okay. I don't need to prove this. And so I think for a long time, the feeling was I didn't trust it myself. Maybe this is the deep core. When we really trust in this and have truly surrendered ourselves to it, there's no need to prove it or to need the world around us to understand it. Because I'm in pain, and if you don't get it, I'm in pain. If you don't get it, somehow it's not validated within me.
Yeah.
When all that is dropped, then it's like, and even having the world go to hell. Yeah, there's pain in seeing people suffer and such, but also in that happens within the embrace of God. There's sufferings happening within this, so it's perfect. So there's also looking at that and saying everything's unfolding beautifully, perfectly.
Well,
I know.
I'm glad we're personally connected to you. Sometimes our guests are people that we've encountered online or some other way, and we talk to them. But this will be something we'll continue with when next time we either see you with preparation or by surprise, as was the last time here in Encinitas. But before we let you go, we have a quick 3-question little rundown we ask all of our guests. But before even that, I'd just like you to quickly characterize your work. You mentioned clients and students, and sort of what is that, and what is the nature of that, and how does that work there? Is it online? Is it in person? Maybe give us some of those details.
Yeah. If you had asked me this yesterday, I would have defined it differently.
Oh, wow.
And if you ask me tomorrow, I'd probably define it differently again. Today, it is the recognition that the work is awakening the spiritual vitality within others. The work is to help guide people through the illusion. It's like the guiding I've always done. Here's the world you're living. We can cross a threshold, and there's this whole other place you've never been before. And so the work is to helping people awaken to their spiritual truth.
Yeah.
That they're not just the mind, the emotion, and the body, that they are the one. And the one is infinite. It is forever unfolding. And it's a lifetime and lifetimes exploration. And that's what our life is. That's what it's about. So that's the work. It happens individually. I love the individual work. It happens by phone, by Skype. When it happens by phone and by Skype, what I typically do is I work with clients, and we'll say every week, okay, let's get together each week. We'll schedule about an hour. But what will happen often is if 20 minutes into the session, we've landed on something powerful. We've uncovered something, we've unlocked something just came alive. We'll end it there. The session is like, okay, good. I'm going to go about my day, you go about your day. We had an hour scheduled, but this, if we go any further than this, what we just awoke is going to get diminished. Because we'll say, wow, that's amazing. This is good. And the person's like, yeah, man, I want to work with this. I want to sit with this. This is the inquiry I need. Okay, but we're only 20 minutes into the call. Now we spend 40 more minutes talking about other stuff, and it falls away. So that's how it works in sessions. Personally, I have my beautiful home. It's a sanctuary here in Sedona. I've got a guest suite with a private entrance. People come and they spend 2 days or 5 days or somewhere in between. And during that time, we decide how much time and what type of sessions we want to do together. So I teach meditative inquiry. I teach breath work. I teach just perspective shifts, how to hold life differently. There's different modalities we use as well, pulling cards and such, just to bring up the dialogue and we go out onto the land, and we just keep surrendering. We surrendering what has always seemed true and opening into what might be more alive in our lives. So those are individual, and then I also do some group retreats. I'm currently working with a couple of people. We just finished a 4-day Sacred Journey retreat. We've got this beautiful woman who's a seer and a medium who's phenomenal. I mean, talk about seeing all the different levels of spirit. So my friend Joseph Gray Wolf, who's a Native American, Lakota, Dakota. Oh, wow. And then I come from more the contemplative Zen Buddhist background. And so between the three of us, we hold space for people to unfold into new awakenings of self.
Cool.
So beautiful. Can't wait to see you in person next, Chess.
I can't wait. Yes, come visit, you guys. Come stay and play. And I love you guys. I look forward to
do that.
So good. Well, we'll ask you our 3 closing questions. Okay. What book or books, up to 3, do you recommend that every human being reads?
One of the ones that was pivotal in more on the personal development side, which I think is necessary. We do the personal development so that we can relax our persona enough to let it go completely into our spiritual development. And the personal development book that I'd recommend is called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. It's a 10-week process. There's breathing in the morning, there's breathing in the evening, and he takes you through a beautiful 10-week process of recognizing where does our wounding come from, where do our stories come from, and how do we stop inflicting our stories on others in the world and take self-responsibility for our emotional state of being. My favorite quotes from his is, drama occurs when we ask others to give us what we haven't learned to give to ourselves.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So,
that's nice.
Michael Brown, The Presence Process, fantastic book. I love, he's gotten in trouble with some of his students. Andrew Cohen, Buddhist teacher. And I haven't followed much of what kind of unfolded, but one of the books that I loved was an Evolutionary Enlightenment. I think that's it. Evolutionary Enlightenment. And he really just speaks to, if you really, really, really get to understand and buy into the idea that you are much more than just this small being, and that life can breathe through you in this whole different way. The question is, what are you going to do with that? And he really holds your feet to the fire and says, what are you going to do with this one precious life?
Yeah.
And then I would say the other 2 books, or the collection of books, would be The Poetry of Mary Oliver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you just referenced it.
Exactly. That's what brought it up, right? Yeah. A Summer's Day, that beautiful poem, A Summer's Day. And then David Whyte, Whyte, the Irish poet and philosopher. His writing and his speaking, the way he speaks about life. So David Whyte, Mary Oliver, and those other 2 books would be my highest recommendation.
Those are great. We have a collection of about 20 to 25 books we're going to put in the van. And Mary Oliver's, 2 Mary Oliver collections are there. And I think I read this book first. Teresa and I share books, but it's called Soulcraft by a fellow named Bill Plotkin. But anyway, he brings poetry into his writing a lot, and he obviously cites Mary Oliver a lot and David White, and it's perfect, beautiful, complementary. The two of them are very similar in some beautiful ways. Second question, what thing or keepsake have you held on to the longest, and why? What object?
That's a great question. I look over on my altar here. Very little. First of all, I'll say very little. But on my altar is a pile of Tibetan turquoise. And on my bracelet here is some Tibetan turquoise that I sent to a friend of mine so she could make this mala bracelet with it. It's just probably one of the things I've kept the longest from my journeys up in Nepal. In different villages, I'd collect and find pieces of turquoise that already had the holes drilled in them, because they've been worn and strung and unstrung and restrung, and just there's so much wisdom and history with all of them. And so every time I look at them, it just has this sense of the wisdom of the ages that transcends all of our little beliefs. It's like when all that goes away, what is left? What is left? And these pieces of turquoise are they're of the land and they're of the spirit. Maybe that's it. It's kind of the combination of the two.
Nice.
So good. The third question is, what have you learned in the last 30 days that you think every person should know?
It's just deepened in the last 30 days. I mean, it's just the simplest teaching. We got to get it. We are not our thoughts. That's it. We are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are made up. Sorry, it's crazy to determine an entire life based on things that we are making up on a regular basis. Yeah, that's it. That's the best. That's what guides me the most deeply.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we sign off, Jess, where should people connect with you online? What would you like people to know about maybe what's coming up for you? Any retreats or events that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So it's simply my name, ChessEdwards.com. And I would say come to Sedona. Come on retreat. Come on retreat. Leave your home. Leave what's comfortable. Leave what's familiar. Everything in Sedona gets activated. So come open into a deeper aliveness that will get activated here. Will come more alive here. Give yourself the opportunity to go away and empty the backpack. The fall here is going to be phenomenal. The September, the monsoons are starting to calm down. So September, October, November, December, into that time period, come stay. And if you're in a partnership, bring your partner and have some really loving, honest, surrendered conversations about what do you really want in life? How do you really want to love each other all the more deeply?
Well, we've been to Sedona a handful of times, and each time there has been more has been revealed in a very dynamic, vibrant, and vivid way. I think that's the word that comes to mind. It's just abundantly clear as to, whereas in other environments, perhaps it'd be a little subtler. In Sedona, it can be very clear, and we've had strong experiences there for sure.
And we're heading back for the fall.
Right, October.
So it's perfect. It's perfect.
Well, Chess, thank you for your time and for your wisdom and for your clarity and generosity. It's been tremendous to talk to you.
It's been a blast. Mm-hmm. You guys, I appreciate what you're doing, not only with the podcast, I appreciate how you're living your lives and how you're choosing to live your lives. And, that's going to radiate and ripple out to all of those around you. And the love that you carry, within you, how you abide in your own love, it resonates. It's just huge. So keep doing it. Thank you guys. I love you guys.
Thank you. We love you too very much. Wonderful. Really wonderful.
Okay, that's it for this week's Ownstream podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this fantastic interview with Chess Edwards. Please be sure to check out the show notes for this episode for everything mentioned, including his website, social media, and all the books and resources that we discussed and more. All of that can be found at ownstream.co/chess. That's ownstream.co/CHESS.
Also, before we let you go, once again, please sign up for our weekly tip-off email at ownstream.co. Just click the sign up button in the upper right-hand corner. This is where we share each Monday 3 cool things we've learned in the last week in the areas of lifestyle, business, and spirit. This could be an amazing quote, individual, tip, or tool designed to bring you more freedom and power in your life. So definitely sign up for that again at ownstream.co and just click sign up.
Finally, please find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ownstream and be the first to know about new podcast episodes, new blog content, and cool stuff related to our personal journey. Also, we're on Twitter at Ownstream and on Instagram, where we post regularly at own_stream. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.